August 9th, 2017, Open Space and Mountain Parks, City of Boulder Board of Trustee meeting is now beginning. And the first thing I believe we have is a junior ranger program. So, jump right in.
It's so nice to see all of you. My name's Felice Rupi, and I'm really privileged to be introducing some junior rangers tonight. We have 100 students out in the field doing work for the department, promoting resource management goals around trails and forest management and weed management. They've been having a great summer, and they are working on their skills in job performance, teamwork, stewardship awareness, and leadership. The legacy of the department's investment in youth voice really shines through not only in the product that we're working on, but also in the team process. Very powerful to witness these students taking accountability not only for themselves, but their teamwork, and they accomplish really incredible things. I was out on Dakota Ridge Trail today, and we received fabulous feedback from the hikers. They were saying thank you, and they're so encouraged by the passion of young people. It's really a privilege to be involved in that work. These students are incredible ambassadors for collaboration and community engagement. My earliest mentors were people who inspired new ideas for me and encouraged my best abilities. And tonight, the presenters are going to share with you what inspires them to service, and it might help us reflect on not only what has inspired our values, but how we can help other people share similar values. So it's my privilege to introduce Carter Moffett, Emeka Brown, and Holland Stevenson. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carter Moffett. I'm a fourth year in the Junior Ranger program. What fuels a life of service? Service to me means giving what I have, whether it is work, passion, or love, to support someone or something. I came into the Junior Ranger program the summer before my first year of high school. Knowing very little about OSMP and what to expect, I was amazed by how much I learned about the organization and what it does for the community. I was taught an appreciation for the trails and open space that has only grown over these past 4 years. This was sparked by the passion I saw some of the older members and crew leaders had for the work that we were doing. I saw this passion as value and care for the land since it belongs to all of us. This helped convince me of the importance of taking care of what makes Boulder beautiful and why that's so beneficial for the community. One thing that was reiterated was the importance of the Junior Ranger program and how it teaches young adults that OSMP is a place that belongs to them, but is also a place that needs to be taken care of. I also noticed that the amount of people who used the trails for a wide variety of reasons and benefited from the work we did as Junior Rangers. Fostering service above self benefits the environment. I feel that I'm now sharing that same passion with some of the younger Junior Rangers this year. I have learned to love and respect OSMP and the trails, and that would be hard to come by anywhere else. Having just spent last year studying in Spain, something that blew me away was their lack of awareness when it came to taking care of the environment. When I first got there, I thought they didn't use trash cans because they would just throw their trash on the ground. From this experience abroad, I have a new appreciation for OSMP and the opportunity we have to take care of the natural beauty here in Boulder. I've been taught to treat OSMP as my home, and because of this, I have a new respect for the trails. From little things like picking up trash to even trying to explain to a hiker why they shouldn't use a social trail. This job and my work with it has had such a significant impact on me. I'm considering a career in being of service to the environment. Junior Rangers this is how Junior Rangers and OSMP has fueled a life of service for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Emeka Brown. I'm a second-year Junior Ranger. Last summer, my crew and I built wooden risers on the Mesa Trail. As we worked, we saw people from all walks of life, from a family with 2 little girls bounding up the trail with their dog, to an older couple slowly climbing the steps and pausing to talk to the crew. We heard languages we didn't recognize and met tourists from a different country. But the one thing connecting all the people we saw was their love of nature. Seeing and interacting with all these different people made me realize how lucky we are to have trails and open space accessible to all in Boulder, regardless of money, age, ability, and any of the other factors that may divide us. Open space is the heart of Boulder. I can't imagine this city or this community without it. Every one of us is connected to open space in some way and contributes to its health and protection. Because of Junior Rangers, I realize that I have a responsibility to protect open space, and that we all do. I feel an ownership and pride for the trails I've worked on. Open space is a place where everyone can belong. As a Junior Ranger, I know that I am helping to create a sense of belonging for future generations. Personally, I found this sense of belonging in the Junior Ranger program. In high school, many of us are trying to figure out how we fit into the world and how we can contribute to it. Working with a crew towards a common goal creates an environment in which we all have something to contribute. Every one of us brings something valuable to the crew. As a student, I was trying to find this at school, but I found it with Junior Rangers. I'm a part of something bigger than myself. This program has taught me to actively seek out ways to better my community. I am so grateful to have grown up in a place that values natural spaces and their conservation. And I have no doubt that wherever the future takes me and my fellow Junior Rangers, we will take these valuable lessons with us.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Holland Stevenson, and I'm a fourth-year Junior Ranger. They say that home is where the heart is. I'd say that for the city of Boulder, home is where our trails are. I've been a part of the Junior Ranger program for 4 years now, and I'm about to go off to college and hope that who I've become is ready for this big step. Junior Rangers becomes a part of your identity, and college is about sharing your identity with the world. The service that we perform creates ripples throughout our lives. I've been gifted with 4 years to share Junior Rangers with my community, and a lifetime to share it with the world. Back in 7th grade, I couldn't imagine having home anywhere else. Even my mother and all of her friends who had grown up here in Boulder always returned. Now it's cursed, you know. And that seemed to be my fate too. Go to college in Boulder, start a life in Boulder, raise kids in Boulder. And yet, every other Saturday that spring in my 7th grade, my family and I would hike Sanitas. And it was fun, beautiful, memorable. But Sanitas wasn't home to me. None of these trails were. Home was my comfortable bed, playing in the backyard with my dogs, my family. Sanitas? Well, Sanitas was just a trail I hiked every once in a while. And then, following doggedly my elder brother's footsteps, I found Junior Rangers. And suddenly it clicked. Certain well-groomed trails have become familiar, like a favorite room. The names of terrain and features roll off my tongue with the names of family and friends. Water bar, outfro, apron, slough. And the confidence with which I greet people, the very ones we're maintaining these trails for, is the confidence that I carry with me daily. And now, preparing to set foot in unknown terrain, a concrete jungle 1,794 miles away in New York City, I reflect on Sanitas and other Boulder hiking trails, and I think of home. Perhaps I don't find home until I take responsibility for it. College is about the future, and so is Junior Rangers. We are living the future that OSMP dreamed up over 50 years ago in making this program, and the work we do today helps to ensure that we can give that future back to Boulder for another 50 years, or 100 or 200. When I go off to college, I'm leaving home. Not just my house with my parents and the people I love, but Boulder and OSMP too. Junior Rangers helps to ensure that I, and so many hundreds of other people, will have a home to come back to. You can take the girl to Boulder, but you can't take Boulder out of the girl. And I owe Junior Rangers a huge debt in helping to give me the confidence to know that no matter how far I roam, I am home. Thank you very much for your time. And then we wanted to open the floor to any questions you guys might have.
I was hoping we were going to hear the crew songs.
We're working on some videos.
Well, that's good. I mean, I don't know if the folks in the audience have this handout, but it looks like every crew created some sort of work of art, and several of them wrote pretty remarkable songs. So I'm glad you're going to record that. It really would be something to see. So thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Now, I understand that you have saved us 10,000 hours of time that you've contributed to the program, and you're really a model of stewardship. And since we're shifting into that mode in the future, it's inspiring to have the Rangers part of the program. And we have 4 staff, I guess, that started out as junior Rangers as well. Yeah, so I don't know if any of them are here tonight, but
In fact, there is at least one in the audience.
yeah. Nice. A real Ranger. Awesome.
I'm also a former junior ranger, and my name's Arian Hampel, and I'm one of your ranger naturalists, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about a pilot youth program that was really, for me, inspired because of the junior ranger program. It just ended last week. It was called the Junior Ranger Naturalist Pilot Program. It was designed to allow youths between 14 and 17 years old the opportunity to learn about outdoor leadership, customer service, stewardship, and to promote natural resource protection. This program was born out of a discussion 12 years ago, actually, with Halise, and I revisited it and collaborated with it during a meeting I had during the World Ranger Congress last summer. And I was meeting with other rangers from Nigeria, Australia, and the UK, and we came up with this idea that we needed to help get more community investment in our natural areas. And so at this meeting, we decided 2 of the best ways to do this was through youth involvement. One of the ways was through a decision-making process and allowing them to be able to be part of those processes. And the other way was by getting them involved in the work that rangers do and new career opportunities related to visitor management and natural resource management. So we recognize that most people have a poor understanding of the diversity of skills that rangers are required to do to be competent in their positions. And so we challenged each other to create programs internationally to allow the next generation of park visitors and park protectors to learn about ranger skills. The goal of this pilot program was for participants to learn about professional outdoor skills and to apply them with rangers in the field. We were able to do that. The pilot program included 10 members, ages 14 to 17, from high schools all across Boulder. As part of the pilot program, we also partnered with Boulder County Rangers who helped lead portions of the program. Some of the highlights of the program were trail restoration work. We got them CPR first aid certified, as well as teaching them search and rescue techniques. After that, we broke them into small teams, and they helped them participated in field-based and mock search and rescue scenarios with emergency services, with the County of Boulder as well as the City of Boulder. They led their own naturalist program, a fishing is fun program for kids under the age of 12 with their parents and guardians. They also learned about the connection with outdoor recreation, natural resource protection in the Boulder area as well as internationally. They learned about, all participants said that they would do the program again. We gave them surveys as well as compiled other information, and we will provide a further update to the board and to the department at a later date. The program was overall a great success, and we hope to have them, some of them maybe come and talk to you in October. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Wonderful.
So we're appreciative of Arian and his initiative to pilot the Junior Ranger Naturalist Program, and also for Halise and her continued leadership of the ongoing Junior Ranger Program. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Let's see, do we have any? We're moving to approval of minutes. Do we have any changes on the minutes? Tom? Andrea?
I was not in attendance at that meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, do we have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll move approval of the minutes of the Open Space Board of Trustees meeting of July 12, 2017.
Second.
All in favor? right. Then we have public participation for items not identified. Do we have some? Great, thank you. Okay. Alan Delamere.
After I finish my presentation, I'd like to talk about junior rangers, my experience with them, if you don't mind. Okay. Okay, the good news is I found out more about the Sanitas situation, and that's the reason for my interest in this presentation now. See, one of the things I've been, I don't know whether some of you may remember in 2015 in August, I came and said, hey, we don't know about the rate of increase of open space. And I've been addressing this open space parking problem ever since. We know the current status of how many people are using it, but we don't know what the rate of increase is and how bad will the parking be in a few years. So I got some new information thanks to working with Dan Burke. He sent me a couple of reports, the 2004-2005 visitation estimate report and the staff report on Chautauqua. So the Sanitas thing was significantly higher than Chautauqua, which came as quite a surprise to me. Then looking at the Chautauqua growth between 2005 and 15, it's greater than 200%. So that gives us some good information. Now, the other thing that's very good is we've got these data counters in the Sanitas area. There are 3 of them, and raw data is now available. So I've been working with staff, and they sent me a sample of the data the other day, and I was able to just plot some of it out very easily. And so the good data is available today. Now, talking with staff, they say, well, we have the raw data, but we've got to verify it and correct it, and we won't have anything until sometime late next year. And so that got my attention pretty seriously. So the steps of processing is to read the data, which is pretty easy into arrays, I was able to do in a matter of 10 minutes or so, and then look at the data for anomalies, if there's a bad battery or a sensor failure or whatever, and notice that. And then they do some correcting for visual observations. They do a visual count, and then use that to do some corrections. And then when all this is all put together, they produce different fancy charts showing everything. So right now, I reckon in a couple of days, I can take an existing year's data and convert it into readable format in very usable arrays. And the staff can then check it, and I think we've got something to work with, which I think is pretty essential. So what I'm saying is we've got a massive open space parking problem, and I've been saying this for rather a long time, and now is the time to address it and not wait until a master plan begins to come into being. So
Alan,
the master...
can you wrap up?
Yeah, I am.
Thank you.
Right? Procrastination is not the answer. Action now is needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I pass my 2 minutes about the Junior Ranger program?
Very
Oh, 1 minute.
quickly.
Our daughter, 40 to 45 years ago, was a Junior Ranger. And so we got the stories from her, how she was building water bars on Green Mountain and so on, riding in the bucket of the earth-moving stuff and so on. She was paid a grand $3 an hour, and then the program fell apart because the city found it was illegal for them to pay the Junior Rangers so little money. And then somehow they came up with some creative accounting and solved the problem. Thank you.
Okay. So we're moving now to matters from the department.
So before we have a staff presentation, we just wanted to remind you about the Art Inspired by the Land art exhibit. You should have gotten an invitation, and that kicks off this Friday at the library. Also, for the board retreat that's scheduled for August 29th, some of you have and some of you have not touched base with Heidi Brinkman, who will be facilitating. So just a kind reminder, if you haven't, make sure you connect with her so you can all get buy-in to have a productive meeting on the 29th. And so now we have a staff presentation, and Erica Pilcher and Mark Ambrosi from Boulder County are going to come on up.
Hi, I'm Erica Pilcher, Recreation and Cultural Stewardship Supervisor. I would just like to introduce Mark. He's here from Boulder County. He's a long-range transportation planner, and he is also the project manager for the Arapahoe, Colorado 7 Planning and Linkages Study. So he's going to tell us a little bit more about where they are in their process and any overlay with open space.
So hello, my name again is Mark Ambrosi. I work for Boulder County and their transportation department, and I'm leading the study that is underway right now and actually wrapping up pretty shortly, called the State Highway 7 Bus Rapid Transit and Planning Environmental Linkages Study. So tonight we're going to focus on the planning and environmental linkages, which looks at the area between 75th Street and US 287, looking at transportation improvements along that corridor. To move people through the corridor safely and efficiently, to identify transportation improvements in that stretch that will meet our transportation demand and out to 2040, and look at a number of other improvements that can help facilitate people moving on the corridor. So on our first slide here, we have a purpose and needs statement that we've developed collaboratively with our project partners. The purpose of the multimodal or proposed multimodal transportation improvements is to address safety for all users and move people efficiently through the corridor. So pretty self-explanatory. And so I want to talk a little bit about our approach to this study. So what we're trying to do here is identify improvements that are going to actually help people and not cost a ton of money, and minimize the impacts that we have on the adjacent land on either side of the corridor. Our right-of-way that we have available is pretty limited for this project, or that we've identified as pretty limited. And so we want to minimize any impacts to the greatest extent possible. So this first slide here looks a little bit at some data collection that actually CDOT did about a year ago. This is a vehicle probe run. It takes place at 4:20 in the afternoon. They did multiple runs, but basically what it's showing here is where the congestion is occurring currently on the stretch of corridor. So if you look at it, you'll notice, I don't know if I have a beam here. Whoops, doesn't look like it. The circled areas, those are around the 95th and 287 intersections. And what that's showing us is that there is not adequate capacity to move people through those intersections efficiently. What the arrows are pointing to are the links between the intersections. And what you notice is that traffic actually flows pretty well even during the worst traffic time during the day in those areas. It's really the intersections that we've identified as areas that we want to target for some improvements. So some of our goals with this project, maintaining rural character is very important. We've heard that from our project partners. We've heard that from the public. CDOT recognizes that. So we have pretty unanimous support for making improvements that really minimize those impacts on the rural character of the road. Obviously, open space owns quite a bit of land to the north and south, particularly over by 75th or between 75th and 95th. And so we want to promote these alternative cross sections for those links between intersections that don't just add a ton of asphalt, but actually facilitate people moving efficiently and aren't going to change the character a whole lot. Another goal for this project is really to enhance safety and mobility for all modes of transportation. So we're really not looking just at cars. Back on our initial slide, the project name is the Bus Rapid Transit Feasibility Study, Planning Environmental Linkages. So just in the name there, we're looking in this study at the feasibility of establishing some sort of bus rapid transit system between Boulder and the city of Brighton out to the east. And looking at ways to move that bus efficiently through this section of corridor has been one of the big challenges and things that we're looking at. Additionally, out there today, I'm sure everybody recognizes there's not huge shoulders on the road. It's very difficult to bike. Being a pedestrian is almost impossible on this stretch of corridor. So we want to make improvements for those modes as well. It's really important that we are addressing all different types of transportation modes and not just focusing on single occupancy vehicles or moving people in their cars through this stretch of corridor. So with this, so some of the challenges that we face, the transit travel time is not competitive today. So if you take the jump, which goes out to Lafayette and Erie, it takes about an hour during these peak periods, and it takes about 20 minutes to half an hour in your personal vehicle. So that's something we want to address with this project. Other things that are to note, the transit service frequency isn't optimal right now. It's about 15 minutes during peak hours. We'd like to see that a little bit shorter, so we'd like to see more buses out there. And then again, there's no safe facilities for cyclists or pedestrians on the corridor as it is today. So again, I really wanted to reiterate the primary goal of our project and what we've been communicating to the public is that it's important and we recognize to maintain this rural character. And so these next few slides really kind of provide an example of what it would look like if we went to 4 lanes with shoulders, or that'd be 2 general purpose lanes in each direction, and kind of what the impacts could be. This is a stretch just east of 95th Street, actually, so this is over in Lafayette. But this is kind of what we have today. It's about 26 feet, 28 feet. If we added another general purpose lane, now we're looking at 52 feet, I believe. 54 feet, something like that, and that's starting to impinge a little bit on the large trees and the farmland and really changing the character. And then there's also the clear zone that you have out there, which is the area from edge of pavement that you need for safe transportation. And so then you're really getting out and kind of pushing into some of the historic trees, some of the other stuff, people's farmland, and changing the character quite significantly. So just going back, that's a big change, and we really want to avoid this kind of runway that is showing here that you could land a plane on. So the cross sections that we are looking at for this corridor, this is basically showing the typical right now what we have out there. There's basically 2 12-foot lanes, very little shoulder on either side, and then there's some green space. Our typical or I guess average right-of-way availability is about 64 feet. It varies on the north and south a little bit depending on which parcels are out there. But on average, it's about 64 feet. So we've identified a number of different alternatives that we think could meet the needs moving into the future for transportation, and we're going to share those now. The first option out there is essentially a no-build option. We'd be looking at, maintaining those 2 general purpose lanes, probably scabbing on some shoulders onto the outside that are a little more significant than what we have today, so that some cyclists at least would feel comfortable riding on the corridor. This would increase the width a little bit, not a huge amount. And in addition to these things, we'd probably do spot treatments at certain intersections, maybe a left turn pocket into some of the side roads, and some other minor improvements like that. But essentially, it's a no build with just some really minor safety improvements out there. With this option, we would also be looking to install sidewalks in areas around bus stops, and at more major intersections, so places like 95th, 287, places like that. And in addition, something that we've identified as something we would like to do, and our project partners would like to see this as well, and the public strongly supported this concept, is some sort of separated shared multi-use path that creates some sort of east-west connection. We think the path would make cycling and walking and using this space available to more people, a larger cross-section of people. Right now, having shoulders on the side of the road with the volumes of traffic out there, there's probably 20% of the population that would be comfortable on that. We think the shared multi-use path would expand that to a much greater segment of the population. The second alternative that we've kind of looked at with this project is adding essentially a 12-foot shoulder, full depth, that we could use as a bus-only lane. Or in the future, depending on the need, it could be some sort of managed lane with either electric vehicles or high occupancy vehicles shared with the bus. Now we like this option because it provides a real advantage for the bus. So if we want our travel times to be a little bit lower for a bus rapid transit, this would certainly accomplish that. With this option, I think it's important to point out that we would need to do some other things. One of the things is it wouldn't be safe for cyclists to be on the shoulder because it would be sharing it with a bus, and you have that speed differential, which is pretty dangerous. So this would pretty much require some sort of shared multi-use path, and we would like to see that a little bit separated from the corridor. The final alternative that we're moving forward with this project is a contraflow lane for transit, or it could be, again, some sort of managed lane. I would like to point out here, again, we're looking out to 2040, so there's technology that we anticipate may be available that is not available today. So today, to do something like this, you would need to have some overhead lights and signs and quite a bit of stuff out there, quite a bit of hardware. In the future, with connected vehicles or something else, we may be able to do some sort of solution like this much more easily without the visual impacts that you would have today if you chose to pursue something like this. Again, what we've shown here is some shoulders on the side of the road and also that shared multi-use path again. And so here, I guess this just kind of reiterates the points I just made. Again, the technology for something like this to be implemented would be really key. So that vehicle-to-vehicle communication, infrastructure-to-vehicle, just so you don't have issues in that contraflow lane. So with this project, where OSMP fits in, obviously OSMP owns quite a bit of the property on the north and south of the area between 75th and 95th. If we were to pursue some sort of multi-use path, we would certainly need to coordinate with OSMP, get your blessing, understand how you would like to see things done. Some of the reasons we would like to work with OSMP, potentially use some of that right-of-way is, again, we really do have some limited right-of-way on the corridor, and there are some environmentally sensitive areas and sensitive resources directly adjacent to the corridor, and to the greatest extent possible, we'd really like to avoid those, both the lower costs and then also not to impact these sensitive resources. And then, so what this trail accomplishes, it would provide an east-west connection that really doesn't exist right now for northern Boulder. Valmont is an option for people to cycle on. Again, I think you would need to be one of the more comfortable cyclists because the traffic speeds are pretty high on Valmont. The shoulder exists, but it's not huge, particularly when you get a little bit further east to Isabel. This allows some separation between bikers and people driving in their personal vehicles or any motorized vehicles, so that increases the feeling of safety on the corridor. It's more scenic, it's safer. And in the future, we envision this to potentially connect with the existing path that kind of terminates at 75th Street now. So it kind of goes along Arapahoe west of 75th. And the other idea that we've included with this project is our understanding is that OSMP at some point would like to create some sort of underpass at Dry Creek, and we think that that could be incorporated into this design. So right now, we're not showing any kind of alignment. We would really obviously lean heavily on OSMP to help identify that and identify what you would be looking for to achieve something like that. But yeah, we just wanted to make you aware of this project, and if you have any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them.
Questions?
I don't have a question, actually, but just a comment. And by way of thanks and encouragement, as you were speaking, I was pondering whether there was a trailhead there's a lot of trailheads in the open space system.
Yep.
And whether there was one I hadn't ridden a bike to, not necessarily for the purposes of using the trailhead, but at least ridden my bike past the trailhead. And I realized, yeah, the only trailhead in the entire system that I would not have ridden a bike to is the access to Teller off of Arapahoe.
Yep, off the White Rocks, yep.
That's not by accident. That's, so by conscious decision not to use that.
Probably the safest move.
And it is, I realize the purpose of this is not to get people to open space. It's a transportation-driven thing. But it is a goal of ours, to be able to access the system through passive recreation. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and I do think that's one of the opportunities is potentially sharing some of that space and making improvements that could benefit both organizations, or I guess the public in general.
And that's been a long time goal, is to try to connect some of those eastern properties like that. So I think it's a great concept and look forward to working on it.
There's an unused railroad track that goes sort of in that direction.
There is. The UP rail line, I believe it runs into Boulder along Valmont and kind of veers a little bit north around the ponds, right by 75th and the trailhead up there, actually, and then continues out to Erie. Boulder County, I believe, George may be able to help me with this a little bit, actually, so turn it over to him.
Thank you. I'm George Kirstel, Transportation Director. We are in active conversations with RTD, which actually now owns that vacant or unused rail alignment right now, to undertake a master planning process to install a trail along that right-of-way. And we've been working with your staff to understand what the implications might be, as a significant portion of that right-of-way does run through open space and mountain parks right-of-way and property, much of it very environmentally sensitive, the White Rocks area. So we are kicking off a master planning process that will involve, include your staff, obviously, and when we work through those issues, we'll be coming back to you with whatever recommendations might be necessary. One of the challenges we have to work through with RTD is they seem amenable to allowing us to use their right-of-way as long as we're not on the elevated portion of the tracks. And they seem open to using the portion of the right-of-way that is not elevated. Unfortunately, that's also where there's the greatest environmental wetlands impact. So that's one of the challenges we'll be having to work through with you and your staff and RTD as we move forward. We anticipate putting the master plan out for consultant help in the next few months, and kicking off this year on that master planning effort, in addition to what we're doing with State Highway 7.
George, can you just clarify? So the tracks that you're talking about east of 95th, which go through the Boulder Valley Farms property, is that part of it? Which we just, addressed recently.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Those are now owned by RTD?
That's correct.
Okay.
But I think that's something that we're continuing to have to work through, is ownership of the easements and underlying property. It can be very confusing, and it changes throughout the corridor. It's our understanding that RTD owns that right-of-way, but I think we need to work through with your staff to make sure that there's a common understanding of who has rights for what use. The entire right-of-way would connect to the work that you and your staff are doing at 61st near Valmont, and move east as far as we can go, eventually getting to Erie. There's challenges crossing some of the major roads, 95th and 287, that will be a challenge to work through, but that's part of what the planning is for.
This is a pretty significant change of attitude by RTD. If I understand the history, congratulations. What led to this?
Well, we'll see how big a change it actually works out to be. And I do want to acknowledge that they are stepping out of their past position of don't touch the right-of-way, and are open to us using the edges and crossing over. But their primary concern about using the the rail alignment itself is that if the rail tracks are taken up, they lose some of their easements and rights associated with that. So that's one of the major concerns. And they want to keep the option open if should at some point in the future rail be justified that they could still use it. We've told them that should that happen, we'd be happy to realign the track or the trail at that time, but those are some of the issues we need to work through. I don't see rail on that corridor in our lifetimes, so. But thanks for the interest, and we'll
Thank
be
you.
working with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
I had a couple questions about the planning and environmental linkage itself.
Yep.
So I didn't see in the sources any contributions from the recent open space and mountain parks inventory, and I know that that's, there's some inventories that have come about recently, but as I was going through here and, there were sections on like the animals and the habitat and things like that. Our staff has done a lot of recent work on that, so was any of that information included in this report?
I believe any information we had, we would have provided you, Mark. Is that correct? Or?
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so. Our consultant, when they were doing the data collection, I believe reached out to Open Space Mountain Parks
Okay.
For the most recent information available.
Yeah, I just, in the references section, I didn't see anything specific of like inventories, so that I just wanted to make sure that that knowledge transfer did take place. Okay. And actually, if others have questions, I have to look at my notes and remember what this means. So just a moment, please.
Did you all finish that report before we started our inventory process?
I'm not certain about that. I don't know what timeline. I know that we did reach out to Open Space and Mountain Parks to see if you had information available, and I think we used what was available
Okay.
to inform the data collection portion of the study.
And we're happy to provide.
Erica, I need you to speak.
We're also happy to provide updated information since that time. I believe the date on the report, it may have been finalized before we started working on our actual inventory process. So it's great that we're pulling that information together now, and we might have some updates that could be more applicable.
Okay, thank you. So my other question is, I think it's geared more towards this board and the city staff. But, a section of this report is talking about existing noise-sensitive areas and CDOT's noise abatement criteria. And there's this land use category A, that are lands on which serenity and quiet are of extraordinary significance, yada, yada, yada. So this sounds very much like an open space charter purpose. Yet, in all the categorization of our open space lands, it was deemed as agricultural, which comes with a different noise abatement criteria designation that's a little lower on the ladder here. So my question to you is, do you want to bring this up with the county to have them consider some of our properties not strictly agricultural, or what are the purposes of the particular open space lands adjacent to this corridor?
I would just say that currently those lands are almost entirely agricultural, with virtually no recreational use except for the area up by Teller, which maybe that is one that we should consider currently. But as we work with the county on any designs for the area, and if recreational use were to increase or be added to, I mean, that would definitely be a consideration here as to the noise abatement for those types of uses. Less of a concern for the agricultural current use right now.
Well, this land use category A that I was referring to doesn't say anything explicitly about recreational, but it does kind of imply some level of public use if you're going to enjoy the quiet and serenity of it.
Right.
But maybe it's quiet and serenity for the animals too.
Yes.
Okay, but thank you.
Yep.
That was the entirety of my questions.
Any other? Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
What happens next?
So
That we would see, I guess, or?
I think the next steps with the study itself is we're going to receive a draft version of the study and the planning environmental linkages and provide comments and feedback. We'd certainly be happy to send it to the OSMP staff to have your review and make sure everything is copacetic within our study. And then, yeah, wrapping it up, next steps or follow-up activities for the planning and environmental linkages, which is focused on this area, is really identifying and getting into more detail about the specific improvements we want to pursue in the next, 5 to 10 years, I would say. And I would say some sort of ongoing conversation with open space about a potential multi-use path. And I don't know exactly how that process would proceed, but we'd be working with the City of Boulder and open space to make sure that continues and we continue to have coordination and collaboration. So,
I actually had a question in regards to timeline, and I'm sorry if it was in this report, but is there funding available that once there's a plan to move forward, or is this one of those plans and then go look for funding kind of situation?
This is one of those plans and then go look for funding. Okay. So the idea with this is we were doing the bus rapid transit study. We wanted to make sure Colorado Department of Transportation did a planning and environmental linkages that went from Brighton east or west to 287, and we wanted to make sure that we had that last section planned for, and we had identified projects and solutions in there. So when funding does become available or there's an opportunity to apply for a grant or some other source of funding, we're able to do that, and we have projects identified that are somewhat formulated, so we aren't shooting from the hip trying to identify projects.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a few matters from the board, couple updates and a comment or two. So I wanted to update people on the 50th, the plans for the 50th, and I appreciate that Abby brought up the art inspired by the land exhibit, and that's this Friday from 6 to 8. There's some great pieces there. And then we have finally set the date and the party for the November 7th. We were back and forth with the theater, but we've got that going now, and that's 6 to 10. And then we're working on a video that has all the moments of open space, and that's coming along really well. It sounds kind of exciting. And then I found out that the old Greenbelt poster, we're going to be reprinting that, and we found a good reproduction for that, so that'll be great. And I did kind of want to it was reminded to me that, part of the tax that was passed was for transportation as well. So we're actually kind of celebrating a 50th year with that. So I thought that was noteworthy. And that's about it on the 50th.
Does anyone remember what transportation feature was built first with that? Interesting to know what the history was.
I don't know.
What's a sign?
If Tracy was here, she'd know.
Yeah, she would know. And then I did want to make one additional comment about 311 Mapleton. And in discussions with staff, I feel like this is really a planning board and a city council issue that should be passed on. I don't think that there's further action that needs to be taken by the board at this time. And I'd be happy for us to talk about that, but I feel like there's been a great deal of discussion, and I feel like this is a planning issue, mapping issue that is unrelated to open space. Any questions?
Well, on that subject, I guess I'd welcome just kind of completely closing the loop from where we left this at the end of last meeting, I think you were going to look at the question of whether we had any role in any of this. I don't know if this is all, whether this has all been closed and, determined that there was definitely an error, and in your view that we don't have any role in this.
So that's what we did in follow-up, given the questions that we heard during last session. We followed up with planning and realized or affirmed that the boundary error was a result of the incorrect mapping based on the Silver Lake ditch location, and that's what was evidenced in the early 1970s maps. And the ditch line was the deciding boundary of what was supposed to be for open space or non-open space purpose. So we did clarify that with them, and what's happening is that error is being processed concurrently with the development review, which is why it kind of came up as part of the 311 Mapleton process. And given that, what we feel is, again, that it's an error and that the planning board and the city council are the decision makers as it relates to correcting and updating that error. And there is no action by the board. And so as soon as those dates get scheduled, that would be the opportunity for anyone in the public who feels otherwise to go and participate through those public hearings to be heard either at planning board or city council. Very appreciative of folks' interest and concern in the topic, but we definitely encourage them to pursue if they have a difference of opinion in those other forums, as it's not a matter for us here.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So if there's not other matters, we do actually have a presentation and public hearing on the operating budget. So we will have Lauren Kilcoyne, our business services supervisor, join us as a continuation of last month's discussion and do questions and then public hearing, and then hopefully get to a recommended motion for you all.
Lauren Kilcoyne, Business Services Supervisor, as Abby said, here to talk about the operating budget. And this is our 5th budget presentation this year. Our first 3 starting in April were focused on our CIP, the 2018 to 2023 Capital Improvement Program. Last month when we were here, we switched our focus to the operating budget, and that's what we'll be talking about again tonight. And like Abby said, we'll have a public hearing, discussion, and recommendation. Okay, in tonight's presentation, we're going to provide some additional context around the development of the operating budget, go through some of the highlights from last month. Particularly, we had several questions around FEMA and cost allocation. We'll review again our one budget request for 2018, which relates to our fixed-term staffing. We have 11 fixed-term positions in the department, and we're kind of addressing those holistically through this budget. And then we'll have an opportunity for clarifying questions before the public hearing. And we do have Katie Doling here, who is our Executive Budget Officer, and Devin Billingsley, who is our Senior Budget Analyst for the city, so they can help answer any of those clarifying questions. Okay, so a lot has actually changed since last month when we were here. We just want to go through that a little bit. The first is we've received updated revenue projections for 2017 that also affect 2018 in the budget that we're talking about. So last month when you saw your fund financial, we were estimating net sales tax revenue for 18 to be 32.3 million. That's been projected down, and now you're looking at about 30.4 million as our current projection, so close to $2 million. And we just wanted to explain a little bit our strategy and how we're looking at that as we move forward with the 18 budget and then looking into 19 and beyond. And we've said all along we've been developing very, very conservative budgets based on mixed economic indicators, knowing that our sales tax increments will be expiring in 2019 and in 2020. And this we're kind of considering as one more factor to consider. By no means are the updated revenue projections set. I would say things are still very much shifting. And our partners in budget and finance have been looking at national trends, statewide trends, and then how Boulder plays in. And what we're seeing is that Boulder is behaving differently than the rest of the state. So again, we're just being, I think, extremely conservative. We're trying to be appropriate to the situation, but the overall picture for 2018 still looks very solid. We're still spending within our annual revenues, even given the shift, the updated projection. And our approach is basically to stay the course for 2018, allow things to keep shifting, continue working with budget as those updated numbers come in, and then really address that again next year as we have a better idea of what 2019 might look like. Also, since that meeting, since last month's meeting, the 2018 to 2023 CIP went to Planning Board and received a unanimous recommendation for the citywide CIP. We also presented our operating budget to the executive budget team in the city, and our budget request and our overall approach to the 18 operating budget was approved. So again, for 2018, really nothing looks different. You're still looking at about a $26 million operating budget for next year. And this is a slide that we showed last month, but I just find it helpful as a picture. So our first 3 meetings for the CIP, we were looking at that purple and light blue section of the graph. And what we mean when we say our operating budget is really the rest of the pie. So we're talking about our service area budgets, our debt service, and our cost allocation. And you can see a little bit more of a breakout of those things. Currently for 2018, our debt service is $5.2 million. We mentioned last month that is expected to significantly go down over the next couple of years. We'll be making our final payments on our 06 and 07 bonds. So beyond 2020, you'll see our debt service really decrease. And then this is just a further breakdown of those service area budgets to make the point that we're really working to best steward those public dollars, make sure that they reach the ground appropriately in our all of our public-facing departments. So, or work groups rather. And that's all I'll say about the breakdown there. Shifting to FEMA and flood recovery, this was a big topic of last month's conversation, and you had asked us for some numbers, so we just wanted to make sure that we provide them for you. And just an overall reminder that FEMA reimburses us about 75% of our project expenditures, and that's just on projects that are FEMA eligible for FEMA reimbursement. The state of Colorado contributes another 12.5%. So overall, we're looking at about an 87.5% reimbursement on those FEMA reimbursable flood recovery projects. You had asked what the current estimate is for the cost of recovering from this flood. So from the citywide perspective, we're estimating about $28 million. Of that $28 million, 24.6 has already been spent. And open space is really the last department that's doing flood recovery work. There are a couple projects here and there across other city departments that are getting wrapped up, but because of where our projects fell in the floodplain, very extensive permitting processes, you'll see that a number of our most expensive projects are happening right now. So Mesa and Shanahan and Chautauqua, those types of projects really had to wait until this year to be done. So we're still on track. We're still figuring the end of this year for our FEMA reimbursable projects. And after that, we'll start to submit those requests for reimbursement for the remainder of those dollars. Shifting a little bit to what those expenditures look like. One of the questions that you had asked was about our staffing. So how much staff time are we really putting into this to meet FEMA requirements? And when you look at what we've spent so far, $5.4 million, about 20% of it is salaries. So that could include anything from seasonal and temporary crews out fixing trails, ecologists, cultural resource staff out there confirming that there's going to be no adverse effects to our work, and all of our project managers working with contractors to do all of the bigger projects. And the other $4.2 million is non-personnel expense, so that could include supplies, materials, tools that we had to purchase to do these specific FEMA projects, and then all of our contract work that we've been doing throughout the last 4 years to recover from the flood. And your final question about FEMA had been, have we seen any of this money come back yet? And the city of Boulder as a whole has received $10.2 million back in reimbursement. Of that, $1.5 million is OSMP. And we had gone back and forth about why we weren't reflecting FEMA reimbursement numbers in 2016 as actuals. And I did speak with our city controller last week, who confirmed that a lot of the reimbursement requests we had submitted last year, the dollars came in January. So far this year, we've seen another $1.4 million that you don't see reflected in your fund financial, but that has since hit our account this year. So By the end of 17, I expect to be able to show those as actuals and some additional dollars from some of these projects that will be closing out.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Whoops. Just a quick question on that. Are the rates of reimbursement looking like we expected? I mean, we're not alarmed at things they're disallowing or things like that.
No, things are going, knock on wood, very much to plan. That 87.5% is going to come pretty close to $7 million we're expecting, and the turnaround on that reimbursement has been reasonable, fairly timely. We do keep a reserve for a number of years as FEMA can come back and audit any of our projects 7 years from when the final project on the project worksheet is complete. Very specific. So we'll be holding, I think it gets up to almost $400,000 a year in reserves on the off chance they come back, audit, and disallow some costs, but right now we're not anticipating that at all, and the reimbursements we've received have gone very well. Their review of our scope changes and our project expenditures, so all is well so far. And we have great support from the flood recovery team from the city.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and then cost allocation was the other highlight from last month. And just to reiterate, the model has not changed from last year. We have a commitment from finance to update the cost allocation model every 2 to 3 years. That happened last year through the budget process. And across the board, you're seeing departments have a 3% inflationary increase across all funds, including ours. So no change to the way that number is made up, except to provide that 3% inflationary increase. And when this model was created last year, we had the consultant come to the board and explain it, and he demonstrated that though OSMP was 11% of the budget, we were only being allocated about 6.7% of costs in the overall cost allocation model. So the other thing that came up last month was about duplication. How do we ensure we're not duplicating our efforts, the service providing departments and OSMP? And the process, during the process, the consultant goes out and interviews all the service providing departments, what services you do provide, who uses them, how do you partner with these other departments in the city. That is put into a model that's then shared with OSMP, and we have the opportunity to review it in detail and comment and push back and make sure that our edits are incorporated. But just so you can see a couple of the things that we look at, this is, hopefully you can see it okay. This is a chart of, it just has 4 examples, 4 service providing departments. So you can kind of see that the service providing department really has the expertise in the more difficult parts of that department's work versus what we're providing as a service receiving department. For example, with HR, the HR department is doing all of our labor relations, all of our negotiations with unions, policy setting, laws, with Affordable Care Act and living wage. They've really been rolling out the training, making sure we're in compliance, versus what we do at OSMP, which would be something like candidate selection policy. We design the process through which we choose who we want to hire. From there, HR would take it over and do salary negotiations, make sure we're looking at comps in the city and externally. So we're really doing the things at the department level and then moving it through the process to HR to take that deeper dive, make sure we're being consistent, following laws and regulations. So I won't go through the specifics in each of these. I mean, there are a couple other examples. For example, with finance, finance is doing all of our governmental and grant reporting, our financial statements. What our business services team does is enter contract details into our financial system, pay bills, receive on our receivables. So it's much more of a daily operations role than that systemic planning, strategic level decisions and discussions that happen at the service providing department level. The final example I'll give is for IT. You can see the bottom bullet, data security and storage. And IT is charged with keeping a very it's incredible infrastructure and really vast network that makes sure makes sure all our data is secure, versus what our RIS team might do with our mapping and GIS and our web presence, working on our interactive trail maps. So when we continue to go back to staff and say, do you see any duplication? They kind of say, no, it's very clear to us what our role is versus the expertise of that service providing department, and when we go to them. So for what that's worth, we just wanted to provide some additional detail and some examples for you to look at. Okay, and finally shifting to staffing. We have been focusing since 2015 on our organizational assessment. Since 2015, we have systematically gone through every standard job description in the department that hadn't been updated to make sure the job description is accurate, that position is classified appropriately, paid appropriately. It's been an unbelievable effort on the part of staff to make that happen. And we're by the end of this year, we'll have done 100% of our job studies, which is incredible. And Abby's led that effort for all of us. The only thing that really remained after looking at Affordable Care Act, seasonals and temps standards was our fixed term staffing category. And we have 11 fixed term positions in the department, 9 of which expire this year, 2 which expire next year, but we know based on assessments that we need them now. And so we're attempting to convert them now through this budget process. Of the 11, will be expiring 4. So 3 of those were hired on the job for succession planning. Those retirements are scheduled to happen like we thought that they would. And those fixed term staff have been cross-training since they've been here to prepare to take over that role when those folks retire. The 4th is flood recovery trails program lead. And with flood wrapping up, and we've done some assessments of long-term needs and staffing to take care of our trail system, that position will no longer be needed by the department. So we'll be expiring that at the end of the year. But then there are 7 left, and all 7 of those really work directly on stewardship activities in line with that theme of shifting to stewardship. So you can see 3 trails program leads, a trail contract supervisor, 1 ecologist, a cultural resource coordinator, and a wildlife coordinator. That's the one we're hoping to extend for 2 years as we continue our work with the Prairie Dog Working Group and understanding what prairie dog management will take us over the long term. But all very in line with shifting to stewardship. And it's our effort to make sure that we have the staffing we need to take care of the system over the long term. So that's pretty much it for the operating budget. This is our time for clarifying questions before we shift to public discussion.
Well, I had one, I have a couple, but one concept that I want to clarify is, once the taxes sunset, our contribution from the general fund will not exist anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So when I look at cost allocation's just my thing. It just seems so high in so many ways, and it's tripled since 2006, which is very concerning, how we adjust that. I see what you're saying about the IT and the places, but I just wish there was a better way for us to turn down some of these dependencies and bring more of this level into OSMP daily operations. But it seems to me like you've been trying to do that. And look at those. Are there any, it doesn't include legal, but I understand that we have a lot of legal necessities from looking at our conservation easements and all the way down. Is there any way to, what are your thoughts for looking ahead for a master plan? This is a pretty big hit. And when I figured it out, 2020 will be at 8.9% of our cost allocation. And that's a lot of our budget. So it's a trend that's very concerning. And when I look at, I know that it's a 6.67% that we allocate. It just feels like there should be other options that we should be looking at and trying to work toward in our master plan process.
So it is for sure an upward trend, just because based on the method and how it's projected and the cost of increasing business
Right.
That's what it is. Last month, we highlighted the growth in the FTE and the staff. And a lot of that was to take care of our operations, research, field work, but there's also a big need to run the business of the department, so provide financial services, IT, attorneys and things like that. And what we recognize is we don't always have the capacity or the subject matter expertise within our department. And we're not feeling, because it's not a full-time thing that we need, that it would be reasonable or responsible to have that expertise in-house. So to have our own attorney, when we have access to attorney, or the city attorney's office has access to people who specialize in different law that pertains to the business that we do. So we're feeling comfortable with the method as it exists, and also given the updates every couple years, having the opportunity to ensure that there isn't duplication, but also to monitor, is there a way to find the answers within the department before you reach out to HR or before you reach out to the attorney? So can you get some of those answers to your questions internally before you reach out to the service providing departments who are allocating the costs? So we're aware of it. We also are understanding that just in general, the city has grown, and the experience that we need to be a well-run city requires a lot of different staff that we haven't had in the past 10 years. And so we've grown, and I think the expectation of the community is to really provide services in a manner that is responsible, and to have, again, those expertise in-house full-time when they're not always needed on a full-time basis is a hard one to balance. So not feeling great about it. It is the cost. We're feeling like we have an opportunity to weigh in, make course corrections where it makes sense, but also kind of be limited or kind of minimize the use of those service providing departments if we can help ourselves within the department when it's possible. I don't know if that helps. We understand the concern.
Yeah. Other questions? Do we have public input on the budget? Are we ready to recommend a motion?
I will move that the Open Space Board of Trustees approve and recommend that City Council approve an appropriation of $26,039,016 in 2018 for the Open Space and Mountain Parks operating budget from the Open Space Fund as outlined in this memorandum and related attachments.
Second.
All in favor? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for the evening.
Thank you.
And with that, we're adjourned.
Record time.
Yeah.
Well done.